Good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope everybody's doing okay. This is still Dr. Kiltz channel, but he's away in Mexico, and I'm here for him today. And we have these two wonderful guests here. We're going to talk a little bit, try to answer some questions, and I'm going to be talking and listening and watching the chat. We have Papa Carnivore there on the chat, which will probably be able to answer a lot of the questions that you have. But as I see them, we'll try to answer most. Okay. Uh, so we have Neah and Amy, Neah Nova, Amy Perrin, and hopefully a lot of you already know who they are, but we're gonna give them a chance to talk a little bit, and we'll spend a good time together. I'm gonna start with Neah. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing awesome. Super early, but this is my favorite time of day. So I'm happy to be
Oh,
joining everybody today.
it's 4 o'clock. Uh, you're in Central Time, right?
hmm
All right. So let's get to it. Why don't you start with telling us who is Nia Nova and tell us a little bit about your carnivore story.
Sure. I have a long story, probably like most of us, a health journey that spans back probably more than 15 years, if you're counting up until today. Um, I started really with having gut symptoms, IBS type symptoms in my teens. And that's what prompted me to look into diet and different natural ways to heal. And I got kind of obsessed with it early on because I went to some doctors throughout, um, and I just was not getting the answers that the answers were not working for me. Just continue basically with what I was doing, eating more fiber, drink more water, exercise more, that kind of stuff was take fiber supplements. And I was doing all that stuff at the time, but um, it was not helping. And I, did a lot of reading early on. And of course, you stumble across along that same advice. It's like, eat plant based. I did, got my blood type done and was told, because I'm A positive, that I should be really more on that vegetarian side of things. If I eat meat at all, it needs to be lean, stay away from the animal fat. And so I really took that advice early on, and ran with that. But, um, you know, long story short, made everything worse. I even tried, restricting down to raw vegan, where I was just eating like big bowls of raw fruit every day, raw vegetables, things like that. And I felt miserable and it was terrible. And so, um, sometime in my or like mid 20s, I stumbled across a blog about the paleo diet. And that was like light switches going off. It was like, oh my gosh, this just makes a lot more sense, right? That, oh, we're humans. This is kind of the way we have eaten historically before the agricultural revolution, things like that. And so that started making a lot of sense. And so I cut out grains, and then it's slowly just been over that next probably 6 to 7 years, a slow process of elimination of, discovering like, oh, these are nightshades and there's an issue with nightshade, this group of plants, right? Let me try cutting those out. Starches, cut those out. FODMAPs, realized what that was, cut those out. And so I just sort of stumbled my way into carnivore by accident in my early 30s, going, I think like there was just 3 days where I accidentally only ate meat and realized like, oh, these salads, I think I have these huge salads in my diet were the last vegetables. And it was like, maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's this giant organic green spring mix full of spinach, full of all these healthy things, right? That was causing the issue. And so I've had struggles with alcohol in there. I've had struggles with binge eating. I've had struggles with restriction and over fasting, and there's all kinds of stuff, skin issues mixed in there. So if anybody wants to hear anything specific about any one of those things, I'm open about all of it. But here I am today now, my second try on carnivore at about 18, 19 months. And I am, I'm just sold on the way that this is the only diet that I've ever been on that actually, where I feel like I'm in control of my symptoms. So if I cheat or if I go off the plan, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know how long it's going to take me to get back. You know what I mean? And so I at least now feel like I can control my experience of how my body feels because I understand what a proper human diet is. And I understand that fiber is not all it's cracked up to be. And I understand that plants, although many might disagree with that, they're trying to kill you at all times. I think now I realize like plants want to survive just like everything else. And they're going to defend themselves inside my body, versus trying to claw me or fight me. So that's why I'm still here.
And some people can tolerate larger amounts of plants than others. We're all very similar. We work very similar, but some people are able to, for example, be on a very low carbohydrate diet but still have some vegetables and able to tolerate them. More power to them. I have discovered I have to stay almost zero carbs or as close to carnivore as possible to be able to manage my blood sugars. So if you have any questions for Neah, you can put them in the comment. Please like, share, comment, subscribe to this channel, to my channel, at the Real Dr. Nelson, and you have a free membership if you go to Dr. Kiltz, free membership in the KMT Kiltz Mighty Tribe. Okay. Now, a lot of people come to carnivore because of weight issues. That wasn't exactly your main problem. I mean, you probably, I believe you have lost a little bit of weight, and I've seen some videos where you are talking about decreasing certain areas and so on, but you did have other issues, which you mentioned, the skin and problems with the alcohol and things like that, and gastrointestinal issues. Which one was the worst in your mind of these problems?
It was the gut issues by far, because those were the ones that were like in my face every day. I mean, that was literally what controlled my life, like where I would go, how I would eat. Like I was basically afraid to eat anything because I didn't know. I had no sense of knowing, like, is this going to make me sick or not? Because sometimes I would eat and I would not have to run to the restroom and be in there for 2 hours, in crippling pain. And other times I would. And so it was just like this fear around, like, can I eat before I go work a 12-hour shift? Can I eat at all today, but while I'm working this 12-hour shift? Or do I have to, try to take these stimulants and Red Bull and, drink alcohol and all these, like, to get through my day without eating so that I know that I won't be sick? And so, like, that was really the fundamental thing. It caused a lot of anxiety, a lot of just restriction, and like I'd be afraid to go places and eat at a friend's house or something, because like that was always in the back of my mind. Like, what if I get sick? And it's very embarrassing, and you can't really talk to people about it. So,
how many years did you have problems like that?
It started. The first time I remember it was in high school, and so it was probably when I was about 15 or 16. And I mean, it did not fully get under control until I was 30 when I first started carnivore, 30, 31. So it was a good 15 years.
So in that time, I imagine you did go to the doctor several times.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the advice of the primary care doctor? I imagine you ended up going and seeing like a gastroenterologist, right?
No, I was actually never referred by any primary care to
Okay.
gastroenterology. They told me to
It's
keep
more
doing what I was
private.
doing. Yeah, because I showed up and I was like, because I had been in the ER a couple times thinking I was dying, like, because it was so painful, and I thought I have an obstruction or like there's got to be something going on here. Um, and I had a MRI or a CT scan, and they said there's nothing there. You can't see anything. No obstruction, nothing wrong with you. And so I went to the doctor and told her, I'm like, I'm taking 12 of these fiber pills a day. I'm eating fiber, like I'm sprouting my own whole grains. I'm like trying to do everything right, I'm eating plant-based, drinking a lot of water, but like I can't use the bathroom, or when I do, it's like this huge problem, right? And she said, well, you just need to keep doing what you're doing. She did tell me I had gastroparesis, and she gave me a prescription for that. But I went home and looked up the prescription, and I decided not to take it, because I thought, well, this doesn't solve the problem. Again, right? If you're just going to force my stomach to do something that it's not doing, like that's not so even at that point, I knew like that's not the solution. So I just was not satisfied with those
And
answers.
how long have you been carnivore now?
18 months.
Okay. And during that time, uh, have you discovered any specific foods or spices that still give you symptoms, or
It's pretty much everything other than meat. I
okay?
am kind of I'm dairy sensitive now, which I didn't really know before. Um, I can't do really any yogurts, even butter. If I have too much regular butter, it will cause some issues, and so I have to do ghee or non-dairy animal fats. But
Do
if
you
I
buy
if I
do you
try
buy
to reintroduce, what's that?
do you buy the ghee or do you make your ghee?
I've done both. I've made some, but I actually find a better deal on organic ghee at the store, and so I'm like a less work. So I'll just usually purchase that.
I make my own
Um,
ghee. I haven't found one that tastes the same. And
There's a question.
uh,
There's a question for Neah.
go ahead and read it because I may have missed it.
It's Papa Carnivore says, Neah, when you were vegan/vegetarian, how did you feel physically and mentally? What are your thoughts on that way of eating?
yeah, that's a great question. I it The physical part was obvious. So I had a lot of bloating, a lot of gas, a lot of pain. And I remember being so frustrated because I would, read online like, oh, and I had these cookbooks and these health books, and it was like, here's the picture of what you're supposed to eat. And I would make that picture. Like I would go buy the fancy organic, like all the stuff and prepare it all right. And then I'd sit down to eat this salad, and I'd have like 2 bites of it, and my gut, I'd look like I'm pregnant, just like 4 months, just bloated. And it's like, why? Like, why is so that was I mean, I had 2 different, sometimes 3 different pant sizes in my closet depending on how bloated I was. So it was just like, how bloated am I gonna be today, kind of a thing. Um, and the mental part was something I didn't realize how bad it was until I've gotten to the other side. And I think that's really a common thing. The amount of brain fog, the amount of anxiety, the amount of just like spiraling into these negative self-talk loops, like just this, it's like a whole, like I live in a different mind now, and it's not perfect. And I still have to do other things outside of diet to manage some of that, which I think is totally normal. But
A lot of
my
people,
God, nutrition makes a huge difference.
a lot of people do come to carnivore because of anxiety, depression, but it's just, I think it's a small number. Most people, it's the way that it's controlling blood sugars. And talking about blood sugars, Amy Perrin is here, and the legend, the myth. Uh, how are you doing today, Amy?
I'm doing great. I'm doing very well.
I forget, where are you located?
I'm in Maine. So this
Oh,
was my
okay.
time zone. This is my time zone, although I woke up rather early and could not get back to sleep. That's the one thing about carnivore that I have difficulty with is some nights I sleep and I don't even move. I'm like, I sleep. And then some nights I wake up around 2 and I just can't get back to sleep. So I haven't
Yeah,
figured that one out. And
that
I've been carnivore for 6 years. And I've asked almost every carnivore doctor there is, and nobody has an answer for me. It's definitely a cortisol spike because I can feel it,
hmm
but I haven't figured out. I mean, I have taken supplements that help, but anyway, that was a problem last night. So I haven't
Yeah,
been asleep since 2.
I've been up. I've been up since 2:30. Okay, so
Okay.
you have been carnivore. You mentioned now for 6 years. Did you say?
Yep, 6 years. Yes. And
And why? Because I
so,
haven't. We haven't mentioned the what. The why.
right. So my history is kind of interesting, and I haven't met anybody else that has this history close to mine, but because I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 16, way back in 1971, if you don't feel like doing the math, I'm 70 now. So after I was diagnosed, I started getting interested in health. And partly because when the doctors gave me my first diet, my diet said to eat 6 bread exchanges a day. That's my blood sugar alarm going off because I'm nervous. My blood sugar is creeping up. Um, and I knew that eating 6 bread exchanges a day was a really bad idea. And I knew that even at 16, that I would get fat if I did that. So I figured that doctors had no idea what diet was healthy. And so I never, ever listened to doctors. Um, so I was on my own and I knew it. So then by 42, I was okay and I was pretty healthy. And then by 42, I started getting really sick. So that was after I had had type 1 diabetes for 25 years. I started getting frozen shoulders, frozen hips. I could not move my body fast. It would take me a solid minute to get up out of a chair. Um, I was depressed and I couldn't hold my head up. When we were watching TV at night, my head would droop like this. So I was pretty sick and I didn't know what to do. And then I found Dr. Richard Bernstein and the low carb diet, the very low carb diet. And after I found him with an article and cassette tapes, it was 1996. And then his book came out later that year. And I stuck to his diet of 30 grams of carbs a day religiously for only 7 years because I discovered the raw vegan diet. And there was a kid who had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and his mother put him on the raw vegan diet, and he never had to go on insulin. So I figured that was how I was going to heal. And I did forget to mention that after college, I started reading about nutrition and was convinced that I could heal with nutrition or herbs or diet or something. So I was just convinced, even though doctors all tell you that you'll have it forever, I wasn't convinced. So I wanted to heal. So I was sure that the raw vegan diet would heal me. And I did that for 7 years. I even had a business where I made snacks. I had 18 dehydrators in my house, dehydrating and packaging raw vegan crackers and chocolates and all kind of things. And it was pretty popular for a while, but then when my husband and a lot of my raw vegan friends and me, all of our health started to decline about the 6th or 7th year. So we searched for what are we going to do now? And I started reading nutrition books again. And I read Weston A. Price, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and The Vegetarian Myth by Leah Keith, and a bunch of other books telling me that I really needed to eat meat, basically. So I started eating a keto diet. I did some research in keto, and it was 2010. And at the time when I was researching keto, I came across these groups of people on a forum, and it was called Zeroing In on Health, and it was the Zero Carb group. And I read about Charles Washington and Joe Anderson and Charlene Anderson. And I'm not sure I read about Lisa Wiedemann or Kelly Hogan, who I follow now religiously, but I just wasn't ready to take that leap. Of course, I wish I had, but I didn't. Instead, I went keto for 8 years. And during the last,
you had gone, you had already found Dr. Bernstein, and then you went off to other ways of eating. But basically, Dr. Bernstein is essentially a ketogenic diet, 30 grams or less, right?
right. And I never stopped that. When I went raw vegan, I still ate very low carb. And I think that kind of saved me because I still didn't introduce fruit. And I was still eating very low carb at the time.
Now, you said this was 1971. It so happens that my first experience with knowing about people getting sick and getting conditions, I had an older brother with a couple of medical conditions, but in 1972, my sister developed type 1 diabetes. 72, you said 71 was when you were diagnosed, so that's very close. All right, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat for either Neah or Amy. And I guess that the story sounds similar very often. It seems everybody finds either paleo or keto, and then moves on to lower amounts of carbohydrates for whatever reason until you find, okay, well, other people do it like this. But did either of you found it strange, weird, nuts, people eating only meat?
Oh, I did when I found it in 2010, but by 2018, I realized that keto wasn't going to heal me, so I was still looking to heal. So when we found carnivore, we were on a trip and we were watching YouTube. We were watching keto stuff on YouTube, and up pops Sean Baker and Michaela Peterson and Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, and we're like, those were the only 3 carnivore YouTubes out in late 2018. So I was convinced, and I thought that it would heal me.
How about you, Neah?
Hasn't yet.
When you found out that there were other people eating like this, how strange or not strange did you find it?
It was probably one of the happiest moments that I've ever had, because I realized, oh, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy, because Michaela Peterson did it, and and she had, what's the word for the type of arthritis? I mean,
Rheumatoid.
It was like rheumatoid, but it was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis.
Juvenile
it was like
rheumatoid arthritis.
to the level where she had like the 2 joint replacements at under 20, just like
5, I think.
Yeah, like insane arthritis. So that's what it's called, insane arthritis. And so it's like if it works for her, somebody who's considerably worse off than I am, then this has got to mean something, So like that was another like because I didn't even really know what keto was. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't paying attention to like diet in the form, because keto in the mainstream was, you know, really about weight loss and stuff, and that's not what I was after. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was just trying to not suffer, you know, like with this gut stuff. And so that never even came on my radar. It was literally just eliminating things that I thought were irritating me until I eliminated down to meat. And so it was like, well, this is weird, you know. But then I found a blog called Zero Carb Zen. I think that was the very first resource I came across. And then I was like, oh, I'm not the only one on planet Earth. So it must, you know, it must be something. So it was a very happy moment.
Me coming from traditional training, I've mentioned before, I graduated from medical school 40 years ago, this past December. By the way, Dr. Kiltz also graduated 40 years ago, coming up on May, June, or something like that. So we graduated from medical school a long, long time ago. But coming from traditional training, of course, you know, plant-based, but I had never bought the complete argument about eggs, cholesterol. I've seen so many things like a pendulum. You know, they are good for you, they are bad for you. I did eat or have had meat most of my life, although I have been vegetarian as well, and my wife did as well. But when I knew there were people who ate carnivore meat only, mostly these two names that you have mentioned, Michaela, Jordan Peterson, Rogan, and I thought they were nuts. It's weird, you know. So now I constantly remind myself, yeah, I'm also weird. I'm also nuts about that. I need to stay in my lane to keep multiple things from getting worse. So I see Miss Laugh a lot, which is also type 1.
That's right.
In the chat.
There's another question.
If you see them, read them, please. Because
okay, you know, so this is a question to me by Phoenix. What Amy Perrin, what healing have you noticed now on carnivore? So I did, you know, it was interesting because I was so, by the time I finished keto, I had been eating only fermented vegetables and meat. But even with that, I still had quite a few things that healed. I had the floaters in my eyes went away, and they were really bad because they were like disturbing my vision. I could barely see. So those went away within the first 6 months. And then the first 6 months, I coughed up mucus. And the next time we flew, my ears didn't hurt. So we would try to never fly because my ears hurt so bad during the flight that I had to like put weird stuff in my ears. And, you know, anyway, after I went carnivore, that stopped happening, and we were able to fly to Europe and Italy and Russia to teach painting. So changed my life. Besides improving my confidence, and my blood sugar control is better, and I take a lot less insulin, but I do still need to take insulin so far. A lot less if I can stay on Lion.
Do you have any production of insulin? I imagine you've had your C-peptide.
I looked at my C-peptide on my last blood test yesterday, and it was 0.1, okay, which is basically nothing. But I keep looking at that 0.1 thinking it's not zero. It's not zero.
Mine,
so I don't know.
Mine is 0.3. Mine is 0.3. I don't have any antibodies against, you know, the.
I don't either. I have no antibodies.
4 major antibodies. I don't have them, but I had been diabetic for 28 years. Last 15, I believe today's 27. Uh, so I've been now almost 2 weeks without any insulin. And I was just looking at when I got up, my blood sugar was 84. It has gone up to the 90s now that we're talking, because it seems to bring up my blood sugar as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I keep it also being strict carnivore, or I cannot do too much cheese, which I love, but I had to give up. Past couple of weeks, I haven't had cheese except yesterday because my daughter had bought some cheese.
Cheese is hard. Hard to
It is. It seems to be hard for everybody.
Yeah. And hey,
we do have another question.
Go ahead.
From Anne. Andy asked, how long did it take for your ability to feel hunger to be restored?
Go ahead.
Take that
You
one.
first.
That's sort of I have a complicated answer. Just from having gut issues for so long, I think this is something I didn't know until I got to this way of eating, that my hunger signals were all messed up, because when you are chronically constipated or you're chronically, like, your digestion is just off, you will feel hungry when you're so, like, full and bloated and, like, uncomfortable, and you don't think that you should be eating. And then the flip side could be true. If I would not eat for 3-4 days, I wouldn't feel hungry, because now I know, like, oh, I was in a ketogenic state, but I was also drinking, which was not healthy. So, like, that wasn't good, so, like, my whole thing was messed up. And so it took me like a year to feel like, oh, I think I'm actually hungry right now, like, really just and, like, how much should I eat and when? And, like, I've had to be very, very conscious about, like, thinking about, when am I truly hungry? Is this a stress trigger? Am I just lonely? Am I just tired? Like, what is actually going on? Do I really need food? How much do I need to eat before I'm actually full? Like, I've really had to be, like, go through that process and be aware of it. And it took me some time. And there's still, like, I still ask myself those questions today. So I don't know if that's long or short, but that's what it was for me.
Thank you. How about you, Amy? Hunger.
Well, my hunger signals are not great. I have to be really, really, like, I'm getting hungry for breakfast right now. I can kind of feel it, but during the day, I don't really get hungry. But my other hormone, the feeling full hormone, is really good. Like, I feel full pretty easily. So, but feeling hungry is difficult for me. And, some people say only eat when you're hungry. If I did that, I'd probably have to fast 5 days.
I actually
exaggerating a little bit, but
I kind of want to know more about your perspective on that, Amy, because that's something I still kind of struggle with, is like the not, because we hear so much, especially in the context of women, that we chronically undereat. And I think that's true. Like, a lot of people do come to carnivore and they've restricted, or especially with meat and fat, particularly, they're like, oh, I can't eat a lot of that, so, like, that's a hump to get over. But I feel like I'm in the same boat where, and maybe it is a true gastroparesis kind of thing. And that's why I've really gone into, like, the nervous system and, like, learning how to regulate my nervous system so that my digestion can open up and maybe those signals will be more apparent to me. But I find myself, I get full really fast, like on like 2 to 3 ounces of food, especially if it's high fat. And I kind of feel like that's a good meal for me. But then on the other side of the coin, I'm like, but that can't be, when I tracked, and I'm like, I'm eating about 1,200 to maybe 1,400 calories. And everybody's like, that's not enough food. And so, but it's like, I'm 5'4", 120, 125. So, like, maybe that is an appropriate amount. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Interesting. Well, I eat more than that. I eat very, very high fat, and I usually eat about 6 ounces of meat plus more fat at each meal. And I do eat 3 times a day, because if I ate only twice or once, it would make my blood sugar rise too much. So
More
I like
erratic.
to have 3 smaller meals. But I forgot what I was going to say. Because you asked specifically about something and it just poofed out of my brain.
Like
Hunger.
like eating enough
The
calories or under eating.
gastroparesis. No, I
Okay.
wanted to say, because gastroparesis is something that diabetics get because of high blood sugar. It causes damage to the vagus nerve. There are other conditions that can also cause gastroparesis, but I had it a little bit before I found low carb. It wasn't serious, but it was there, and I think it really can affect your appetite, because your stomach isn't moving as well. That's partly what it is, and so it takes a long time for your stomach to empty. So it might be the gastroparesis that makes you feel like that, but it's also that carnivore foods are so filling and so satisfying that, I mean, maybe Kiltz is right about fasting more, fasting every week or at least once a month. I haven't done that much. The last time I fasted was August last year. I fasted for 3 days. I would like to try fasting again more, but
What's the longest fasting you've done, Amy?
just the 3, well, it was 84 hours because it was 3 days plus the night. So
Okay.
it was an 84-hour fast.
Obviously, to be able to control your blood sugars, you have to cover with insulin. You have pretty much no choice. And so you have to be careful. People like you, they need to be careful with fasting.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really be comfortable with knowing how to lower your basal insulin, because you will have to, especially on the second day, you will have to either almost cut it in half. And when I fasted, I only needed a couple of units of insulin the days that I was fasting. And I don't take a lot of insulin either. Miss Laugh a Lot was asking about if I took fast
Yes,
acting.
I was going to say.
I do take fast acting. I take basal and fast acting. Well, basal is like it's like whether you eat or not, you have to take it just to be alive.
It's a longer acting type of insulin without the peaks and valleys.
Right. And then every time I eat, I take insulin, unless I've walked a lot and my blood sugar is low. I might be able to skip a dose of insulin, but usually I'm taking a dose of insulin after each meal.
So exercise obviously does make you more insulin sensitive, and you have to take that into account. What happens when you get sick?
I usually need a lot more insulin when I get sick, and try really hard not to get sick. But it does happen, and it usually makes my blood sugar high, so I have to take insulin. But I'm very careful with it, because I don't want to be taking more insulin when I get well, and then your blood sugar goes low. So it's tricky when a type 1 diabetic gets sick. It's tricky.
Yeah, you have to be careful. On the topic of hunger, so I had developed gastroparesis, which can be because of diabetes. In my case, I think it was influenced by a GLP-1 that I was using for diabetes, and I used it for about a year and a half to 2 years. I haven't gone back to try to determine exactly, but about a year and a half to two. And I do know before I started that my A1C had been 6.7, and the like 4 weeks or so before I took my last dose, it was 6.7. So it didn't change my A1C. It had not changed me to lose weight. The only time my weight started to come off was when I changed my diet. I first had gone strict keto. Uh, I did that for about 5, 6 months, and then I went to full carnivore. But after my third or fourth day on carnivore, and I have to say I was probably already fat adapted. I've never had the keto flu. I've been doing keto for 30 some years on and off. I used it to lose weight and ended, didn't continue eating that way. I just, oh, okay. I got to where I wanted to be or stalled that usually after losing 40 pounds, I would stall and went back to eating the way I was eating before. So, of course, continue on this yo-yo roller coaster. But anyways, when I went carnivore, 3, 4 days after being carnivore, I from the moment I got up that day, which was somewhere around a couple of days before the 4th of July, uh, in 2023, I was not hungry, and I knew from the morning that I wasn't going to be hungry all day. So I naturally skipped a day of eating because I was eating only once a day because of the gastroparesis. I am able now to eat if I wanted a couple of times a day, as long as they're not like 1 pound of meat on each meal. Uh, Still have to be careful with it, but I can eat a couple of times a day, but not no more than that. So that is much better. I I've learned to listen a little bit to my hunger signals as well. I know when I'm really hungry, and some other times I feel like eating. I do a lot of cooking. A couple of my kids are home, and my wife. And usually when I'm home, I'm the cook. So sometimes I'm cooking. I wasn't really hungry, but then I'm cooking. Maybe I should eat, but I realize very often I'm not really hungry. It's just other people are eating, and that's a little bit of a trigger. But I rarely would get like starving like I used to when I was eating a bunch of carbs and pastries and all that. If you see other questions, please.
There was somebody, Nicholas, kind of on the same topic, was saying, I may start eating in the morning or mid afternoon and not at night. Body doesn't seem to rest well or feel the best the next morning. Any thoughts on meal timing? Or I know Amy said you eat 3 times a day. Do you stop at a certain time, or how do y'all feel about that?
Go
Well,
ahead,
I
Amy.
don't. Well, I eat mostly. I eat at 6, 12, and 6, and I don't eat anything in the evening after 6.
And you do it. You do eat 3 meals a day because that's the way that you mentioned is the better way for you to maintain your blood sugars more stable.
Yeah.
Uh, if someone wanted to skip a meal and eat twice a day, or if
Well,
you're able to,
that's the interesting thing about type 1 diabetes, or when you're on insulin, whether it's type 1 or type 2, is that what was I going to say about it? Oh, that you need to have your basal insulin low enough so that if you want to skip a meal, you can without your blood sugar going low. And I hear from a lot of type 1 diabetics who say, "Oh, I can't eat like that because I'll go low." And if they're going low during the day, on just basal insulin, it means they're taking too much basal insulin. So my basal insulin is down very low, only take 5 units, and then only 1/2 of a unit at night. And then I take insulin for my meals. But I can skip a meal if it's convenient and I'm away and can't get to food or I don't want to eat. I can easily skip a meal, and I often do.
A lot of people find it better, uh, basically eating during the day and not eating at night, too close to bed. Dr. Kiltz eats later in the day. He goes to bed early usually, and it doesn't bother him. He's used to that. Uh, but sometimes, if you're having problems with blood sugars, controlling your fasting, you're paying attention a lot to your fasting. Uh, the longer there is between your last meal and your bedtime, a lot I think is better. But some people don't have a problem with that. So if you eat once a day and you like to do it for dinner or later, that's fine. I think you have to adjust to your own. Now, I had a question for you, Amy. What difference has a continuous glucose monitor made?
Well, it's made a tremendous difference. So I've only had it for 2 years. I finally figured out how to get Medicare to pay for it, and I love it. I'm sitting here. I use my phone and the receiver, and
Okay.
I love knowing what my blood sugar is at any time of day. It can be nerve-wracking because you have alarms going off, and I've had alarms going off this whole time. Like I said, my blood sugar is a little high because I'm nervous about being on a live show. And I'm not terribly nervous, but my nervous system knows I'm nervous. And so if my blood sugar went high, so I've been like, there's been alarms going off. And when, like right now, there's an alarm going off. And when the alarm goes off, it stops the sound for about 3 or 4 seconds. So I miss what anybody says. It can be a bother, or it can wake me up in the middle of the night, which I really don't like. But I am able to turn my alarms off. But it's made
I
a
think the
huge
benefits are
difference.
better than the disturbances sometimes, and it gives you a lot of feedback. Patients don't realize how much it can help them when they do it. Uh, but this thing about having to prick your finger, if you're going to be compliant with that, you kind of get tired 4 or 5 times in the day checking your blood sugar. I never
It
thought
does.
I never thought that public speaking, which I've done a lot, uh, and I have no problems. I never thought I had a problem with anxiety or stage fright or anything like that. But a few months ago, I was giving a talk, uh, and I had looked at my blood sugar before going up. And when I sat down again, I spoke and a Q&A for about an hour. And when I sat down, I looked at my blood sugar. It had spiked over 30 points, and I had not had anything to eat that day. It was past the middle of the day, and I said, "Oh, wow, this is the exact moment I went up to talk." It was like a straight line up. Uh, and since we've been here, right now my blood sugar says 98. It had been 84, so it went up 14 points. Just
That's not bad.
Stress is huge, you guys. Stress is huge. This is why I've been like on this nervous system thing because I wore a CGM just because I got one for free at Hack Your Health last year for 10. It was only 10 days. And mine was super stable, but I wasn't doing this. But I recently got this Garmin watch that tracks stress and it uses HRV as its metric for that. So, I mean, we could debate about how accurate that is, but I know that's why I stopped streaming at night or even really going online at night because I was getting stress alerts. When again, like I've been live so much that I don't really get nervous. I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's I enjoy it. It's fun, but my watch will still tell me like, you've had a big stressful period. You need to manage that. And so whether it's blood sugar or like for me, I'm trying to keep myself from tipping into that fight or flight all the time, because that's where my nervous system kept going. It's like every little thing would just trigger me, you know? So it's like, how do I bring myself back down? Because when we're in, when we're in stress mode, we can't digest, we can't heal, we can't rest properly, we can't do all the maintenance and the cleaning up functions that are everyday kind of stuff that we all need to stay healthy. So I think that's a huge component. And it's just super interesting when you can track stuff and see like, oh, how does that, you know, like even you, Dr. Nelson, you're like, I'm not really nervous to do this, but it had a physiological effect, which is so
Yeah, it
fascinating.
does. And that's why we talk a lot about diet, of course, with carnivore channels. But things like stress and sleep are so important. And exercise, all these things, and grounding, sunlight, and we have to have a more holistic approach to our health and all those things. Uh, you should try to incorporate them and just not make it a chore, but just try to uh, learn to manage your stress. I don't know if you can really. Uh, we can go into the definition of words, right? Manage your stress. Well, everybody has some sort of stress in their lives, right? But learning how to deal with it, uh, definitely. And sleep is very important. And if you don't make a plan, sometimes you realize, and I do that a lot, unfortunately. When it's 11, 12 o'clock and I haven't gone to bed. Maybe I should go to bed. So last night I had 2.5 hours of sleep because I went to bed at midnight, and then I couldn't sleep after 2:30. I see that Ross is here, homesick Buckeye, causing some trouble in the chat. Uh, I see a question from Amy also. Oh, it's the same question I had seen before. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Remember, if you're not a member of Kiltz Mighty Tribe, yes, you're in the right channel. This is Dr. Kiltz Power Hour in the morning, the 5 a.m. meetup, but he's in Mexico. So I'm subbing for him a little bit. In case you don't know it, I'm the newly appointed medical director of Kiltz Health. So that's why I'm here.
Yes, congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, he announced
Making
that
change.
last Monday. It's not even official until next Monday, but we're going to expand the website. Alia is very involved with that. There's a few people who are going to be working on improving, expanding, providing more services. But always, you can still go to drkiltz.com, whether you spell it out or just DR, both will take you there. drkiltz.com or drkiltz.com, and be a member. I know that Amy is a member of the Kiltz Mighty Tribe, and we meet on Mondays at 5:30, a Zoom call, which is not as many people as usually in the morning, but you're able to ask more specific and more detailed questions sometimes in that forum. So Neah, if you go to drkiltz.com, you can sign up for free.
I am in there. I actually did a few weeks ago. So I just like the morning, I'm usually up at this time, but it's kind of like my personal time, so I try not to be on
Yeah,
my
and
computer
it's
yet.
12
So
o'clock. We understand.
it's early here, but Eve was asking, and I did leave this in the chat if that's how you pronounce your name, Eve. This watch is the Garmin Venue 3S. It's like $400, but it's one of the only watches I could find that tracked sleep, which is what I was really interested in. Sleep well, the most accurately, and the stress factor. And and then along with just like my daily exercise and my
And what
walks with a
does it
GPS,
measure?
that's what I wanted.
What does it measure besides your heart rate?
It takes about 2 weeks to track you to get this, but it tracks heart rate variability, and so that's the distance. You know what it is, but it's for anyone that doesn't. It's the amount of milliseconds between your heartbeat, and so if you have a higher right, if it's a higher rate variability, that's good, right? Where there's more difference in time between the beats. It's what you would almost think of as irregular times between the beats, but that's a good thing. It means that your body can tolerate more stress. If you have a lower heart rate variability, that's supposed to be an indicator that you are not very stress tolerant. And so it tracks your heart rate essentially for long enough periods to understand what your baseline is. And then it will tell you, like, oh, like yesterday, I exercised a bunch, but I forgot to tell it that I was exercising. And so it was like, you've been stressed all day. And I was like, no,
Oh,
I
no.
actually haven't, like, because I just didn't enter that I was doing activity. And so, but it's just, again, like if you wear it for 2, 3 months, 4 months, and then you can look back at the trends and you can say, okay, when I live stream, I get a stress response, even if I don't technically think I'm feeling stressed. And so maybe I shouldn't do that at night right before I'm trying to relax and go to sleep, just to help myself sleep. And so you can just start to learn these things about yourself and be like, oh, I don't really care like what the numbers are necessarily, but it's like, what are the trends? What are the patterns that I can figure out so that I can adjust my lifestyle accordingly? So not every watch does this. This is one of the only ones that tracks that.
They've been trying to work on a watch that measures the blood sugar. They have been some attempts already a few years ago, and they keep trying to get one that's accurate. That's the problem with some of these things, the accuracy. You want it to be as close to, if you prick your finger, you want that number to be closer to what your CGM is saying you have. And very often it's not. There could be 15, 20 points of difference.
Yesterday I read something. There was a post on Instagram about this device that you wear it around your neck, and it's a little round thing, and you breathe into it, and it tests your blood sugar and gives you a result. And this kid got diabetes, and his father was a scientist, so he worked with another scientist, and they invented it, but they haven't gotten it to be out. The FDA hasn't approved it yet, but the kid gets to wear it, and he can just blow into it, and it tells him his blood sugar.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Very non-invasive. So, Neah, where can we find you?
I am at Neah's Way on YouTube. I do have an Instagram, but I'm trying to post there more. Instagram, and I do have a Facebook, but
Okay.
YouTube is where I'm most active.
I don't know if Alia is listening right now, but if
I can put it.
I'm sure she
just,
can
yeah,
put it in the
Neah's
description as well. And Amy, where can we find you? Although I find you all over.
I'm all over the place. My YouTube channel is called Brisket Boomers, and I do YouTube. I haven't figured out how to interview people, so I just go on and blab about stuff that's going on in my life and how my diet is going and stuff like that. And then on Instagram, very active on Instagram and Facebook, and I am Amy Fields, Fields Perrin, on both of those. And that's my website too, amyfieldsperrin.com. It's my website.
And that's how it appears on Facebook, I believe, right?
Yep, Facebook and on Instagram, yes.
All right. Papa Carnivore says, doesn't Neah look like a movie star?
Yeah, where's the next when they make another carnivore movie, I'll play someone else in it. How about that?
Well, you'll be in the
It's
carnivore.
chilly here this morning, so I'm
We're
like,
gonna be in the carnivore movie in Austin, Texas, on the 8th of the
yeah,
month. Dr. Kiltz
everybody
is gonna
come to
be there.
Austin.
Dr. Kiltz is gonna be there. Alia is gonna be there, or Alia, like I call her. That's the Spanish version. Uh,
Well, and
and
it looks like we're going to have one in Boston in June,
yeah,
and I will be there.
Yay. Meetups are the best. I was just in Tampa and it was glorious. So they're addicting.
okay. So yes, we are. Alia, you coming online or? All right. So everybody have a good day. We're gonna end it here. And go and sign up,
Thanks,
Kiltz
y'all.
Tribe at drkiltz.com. You have a great day.